Good evening, my dear students. I hope
Good
you can,
evening, mates.
yeah, I hope you can hear me properly.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay. Actually, we met after a very long period of time. And initially, we have started by providing an introduction to psychology. Then after, we had a very lengthy break. And today, we came to see each other or meet each other uh, as the second session. Anyhow, so since we have already passed a certain the lengthy period of time, can you tell me from up to which point I have discussed from lesson number 1? Because basically, I have shared with you the lesson number 1, Introduction to Psychology, and these are the intended learning outcomes. I believe that on that day you have taken your soft hard copies, and you may have sometimes marked at what point we have discussed. So, can you tell me where we have stopped? Have we completed lesson number 1? Okay. Um. Anyhow, since there is no sound from your end, I would like to give a very small introduction about psychology, what we have discussed in this first session. Actually, I don't know whether I have provided you this PowerPoint slides. Have I provided this slide for you? Because I have provided PDF document, as well as I am not quite sure whether I have sent you this PowerPoint presentation, which I have prepared for the previous batch. Have you received this handout?
yes, miss. We have.
Okay. Yeah. When you're referring the slides, what I have gave under lesson number 1, can you tell me up to which point we have concluded? If not, doesn't matter. I'll give a small recap quickly. Won't be a problem. But anyhow, since after a very lengthy period we met each other, let's start having a very small recap quickly. Yeah. Initially, we try to understand what is psychology, because psychology is somewhat a very complex subject. Because psychology, we try to understand the cognitive processes and human behavior of a person, because we know that it's really hard to understand the cognitive processes like memory, emotions, rational thinking, motivation, that kind of cognitive processes. It's really hard to hard to measure, and it's really hard to identify. Why? Because it is that cognitive processes are always inside the human mind. Since the outsiders cannot read the human mind of a particular person, it's really hard to get a very general picture about these cognitive processes. That's why psychology have turned their head to the human behavior, because human behavior is visible. It is observable always and it can be observed by the other party or the external person. And then after, we try to come to different conclusion about the cognitive processes by observing the behavior of the different people. Okay, so try to understand that concept very correctly, because really it's really hard to because initially psychology is all about the scientific study of human mind. That is a very simple definition given by the prominent scholars in the search, like in the the initial stage of the period, when they have understand the importance of this subject, psychology. So basically, how they define psychology, it is a scientific study of human mind. But when the time evolved, people have questioned, or the scholars have questioned, how we can study human mind, because human mind comprised of different cognitive processes, and it's really hard to identify one's cognitive processes, because it cannot, because it's the inner part of a human being. So therefore, later on, different scholars have proposed we can get some kind of idea about these cognitive processes once we are observing the behavior of the people, because they believe the behavior of the person is a result of the cognitive processes. It's obvious always, because let's say if I am behave in an arrogant manner, it demonstrates that the particular person has met with some kind of he's upset, or if not, he's quite that means he's tempered. Okay, that means he became angry. The emotions of that person is not in a positive manner. Anger, fear. Anger, fear may be some kind of emotions which direct for that person's arrogant behavior. So that kind of things can be happen. So therefore they said no. Not only human mind, but we have to focus on behavior of a person as well, because psychology is not only study about human mind, like it's really hard to read the human mind of the person, because we have to trust the people word. If we define psychology as a scientific study of human mind, definitely we have to trust on the words of people. දැන් මට තරහා ගියාම කියන එක මම කිව්වොත් නේ තව කෙනෙකුට දැනෙන්නේ. දැන් අපි කොටින් ඒක අපේ මනස පිළිබඳ අධ්‍යයනයයි කියලා කිව්වොත් මනස තියෙන්නේ මගේ ඇතුලේ. මම ප්‍රකාශ කරන දේ හරහා තමයි මම මගේ ඇතුලේ මොකක්ද තියෙනවා කියන එක අනිත් අය තේරුම් ගන්න. So therefore it's really hard. So that's why they said no, psychology is not only study of human mind, it is all about like it's about human behavior as well. So finally, right now in 2023, we came to the conclusion that psychology is a scientific study of cognitive processes and human behavior. Because now psychology is that scope is very vast. It's a scientific study of human mind, that means within bracket cognitive processes and the human behavior. Okay, taking that point into account and taking that point in your mind, there are different definitions provided by different scholars time to time. But anyhow, when you are referring this definition, you can see how they look at the psychology domain, how they weave this discipline. So some said it's a science of cognitive processes. William James said it's a science of cognitive processes, such as reasoning and decision making, because reasoning is a cognitive process. Decision making is a cognitive process. Then J.B. Watson, 1919, what he said, it's a branch of natural science. It deals with actions and manifestation of trained and untrained human behavior. So J.B. Watson said psychology is all about behavior, not cognitive processes. Look how the contradictory arguments comes time to time. In 1890s, study of it's a science of cognitive processes, but 1990s, it's a study of action and trained and untrained behavior. So, like in 1931, because they identified psychology is describing a behavior of living organism. Okay, so like in 1951, Norman also said it's also study of human behavior. In 1970s, Clark and Miller also said it's a scientific study of behavior, because they have strictly point out the importance of study of human behavior. But Clark and Miller 1970 said, even though it's a scientific study of human behavior, but it's a field of study which include observable psychological changes and behavioral processes. He said, definitely in psychology, there should be psychological changes. Mental changes can be there, but it should be observable. I mean, emotional state should be observable. කෙනෙක්ට තරහ ගියා කියන එක හැසිරීමෙන් පෙන්නුවම අපි හිතනවා එයාගේ ඒ මානසික ක්‍රියාවලිය අපිට කෙනෙකුට ඔබ්සර්ව් නිරීක්ෂණය කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. So later on we identified that simply it's a scientific field, because why we use the word of science here, because if it is a science, if it is not science, actually we cannot understand the cause and effect relationship. හේතුඵලවාදයක් හොයන්න බෑ. As well as if it is not a science, we cannot make rational decision. If it is not a science, we cannot generalize to the future activities, future experiments. Because if it is a science, definitely it should be generalized to the whole world. It is not subjective. It's objectively we should be conduct this study. So no consensus among psychologists in defining this subject area. But as I told you, in 1923, it was defined as a scientific study of human mind and human behavior, or scientific study of cognitive processes and human behavior. but they don't know exactly after 15 years how they define psychology. It may vary. There is more emphasis on social factors, interaction with individual in society. But even though, please do remember, my dear student, psychology is always focusing on individual person. Individual person. But when, like we know, simply we know, a person cannot live on this earth an isolated person. Because always social relationship is really important, because isolation cannot be happen always. Because people would not like for isolation. So therefore, there is a very close relationship with psychology and sociology. That's why under this course, we are studying psychology, later on sociology and counseling, etc. Okay. So basically, from psychology, we are focusing on social factors. Social factors mean like socialization. We are focusing on social issues. Then when we are talking the social issues, socialization, then we'll discuss different important aspect of cognitive processes and human behavior. Like we'll be discuss how personality affects socialization process, how personality affects social problems. So likewise, we try to link psychology and sociology. So therefore, we believe there is a very close relationship between psychology and sociology. Don't worry about it. Since you don't know about what is sociology, will be discussed in a very detailed manner later. So don't worry about it. Just right now, just keep in your mind that there is a very close relationship between these two aspects. Yeah. Then, like simply we can say, like it's a psychology, it's a scientific study of human mind, like cognitive processes such as reasoning is හේතුඵල දැක්වීම කියන එකත් මානසික ක්‍රියාවලිය. මතකය, memory, problem solving, ප්‍රශ්න විසඳීම, නිර්මාණශීලීත්වය. All are cognitive processes. And not only that, it's a scientific study of cognitive processes and observable behavior. Then later on, explain, because basically, if it is a scientific study, definitely we have to use different kind of theories. We have to formulate different kind of hypotheses. So therefore, hypothetical association can be seen. That's why, like, let's say there is a cause and effect relationship should be established. Like, let's say, when people are really upset, that person demonstrate arrogant behavior. That is called cause and effect relationship. Cause is maybe anger, but effect is arrogant behavior. So hypothesis mean temporarily we are making some statement about the phenomenon, and then after we test, we check whether our hypothetical hypothesis is true and accurate with the evidence. සාමාන්‍ය අපි කල්පිතයක් කියන්නේ පුතේ යම්කිසි සිදුවීමකට අපි කියනවා අදාළව අපි తాවකාලිකව සත්‍යයි කියලා උපකල්පනය කරනවා. අපි කියනවා පුද්ගලයෙක්ට තරහ ගියාම එයා කිපෙන සුළු ආකාරයෙන් හැසිරෙනවා. But we don't know, but it's a hypothesis, උපකල්පනය. తాවකාලික සත්‍යයි කියලා because of the past experience, because of the past scholars they have stated. So therefore hypothesis we are created. But we are taking a set of people and we do some kind of experiment and we are testing whether that statement is true and false with the real evidence. So if our evidence proved, if our set of people demonstrate arrogant behavior, if they feel anger, then we come to the conclusion that the anger creates arrogant behavior. So likewise, that's why it's a scientific study. So in a scientific study, there are hypotheses. Actually, we do several experiments and we try to come to the different conclusion about our hypothesis based on the real evidence. But in psychology also, since it is a scientific study, sometime about a certain phenomenon, we develop different kind of hypotheses. Then, even though we have developed different kind of hypotheses, through different kind of social experiments. Not laboratory experiment happens. In psychology, actually laboratory experiments won't happen, but social experiment can be happen. සමාජගත වෙලා, සමාජ ජීවත් වෙලා, අපි ඒ සමාජයේ කොටස්කාරයෙක් වෙලා we try to collect information and we try to collect real evidence and then we try to come to different conclusion about a hypothesis whether it is true and accurate. That's why we are telling it's a cognitive process. It's about human behavior and it's a scientific study. Okay. In order to know about human behavior, in order to know about human cognitive processes, and in order to study these cognitive processes and human behavior, definitely we have to do different kind of social experiment, and we should get the support from people as well. So that's why I said it's a scientific method, as well as cause and effect relationship. We are highly focusing cause and effect relationship. And when we are establishing different kind of in here statement are presented, you can underline and write down hypothesis. You can give another word for this statement, mean hypothesis. Kalpitayan කියලා අපි කියනවා. So actually we make this statement, we construct, we formulate these hypotheses based on past information. When reviewing the literature, when reviewing the articles, when reading the books, after we read the books, we come with past information. With that means with solid arguments, we try to develop different kind of hypotheses. After these statements are scientifically tested, confirmed by observation, and published, and other re-examine the account. Like after these statements are scientifically tested, then after we do several kind of experiments, we confirmed by observation. අපි නිරීක්ෂණය කළා they confirm කරලා, then we published our finding in a magazine or in a book, as an article. Then not only that, after we publish our finding, the other people also should be able to re-examine our finding. මිනිස්සුන්ට තරහ ගියා මිනිස්සු කිපෙරසුළු ආකාරයෙන් හැසිරෙනවාද කියලා අපි අපේ හොයාගැනීම අපි ප්‍රකාශයට පත් කරා. ඊට පස්සේ මිනිසුන්ට තේ දේ කරා මේ ප්‍රතිඵලය ලැබෙන්න ඕනේ. That's why re-examination should be possible in a scientific study. And in a scientific study, we try to confirm by observation. In a scientific study, the finding can be published. In a scientific study, we scientifically test the hypothesis. Those are the characteristics of a scientific inquiry. Okay, so actually I can give a very good example for the scientific inquiry in psychology, like write down like have-thrown experiment. Please refer the have-thrown experiment. It's a very nice. I will teach you when I am teaching lesson number 8, motivation. But let's try to figure out if there is any opportunity. Let's try to figure out. But anyhow, as an example, you can write down for this slide, like have-thrown experiment. Have-thrown experiment is a very good example in psychology. Actually, not in a psychology, it can be taken for management discipline as well, which can be nicely explained as a scientific inquiry about testing people, their behavior and their cognitive processes. Have-thrown experiment is a very good example for scientifically testing cognitive processes and human behavior. So I'll quickly give a small summary about this have-thrown experiment, because in a certain factory, like there is a scholar called Elton Mayo. So Elton Mayo had an inclination or a requirement to test whether the people behavior is directly affected by the working conditions of the factory. Okay, so he want to investigate whether the person's performance or a productivity will vary according to different conditions of the organization. ආයතනයේ තියෙන කොන්දේසි වැඩ පරිසරය අනුව පුද්ගලයෙක්ගේ කාර්යඵලය වෙනස් වෙනවද කියලා යට හොයන්න ඕන වුණා. So then what he done was he has selected 2 groups, experiment group and control group. Okay, so for a control group, what he said was the same number of heads have been selected for the 2 groups. And for one group, he provided like very good lighting, ආලෝකය ලබා දුන්නා. Rest period has been granted. And for the other group, that means the particular, for the control group, they did not give lighting, proper space, and the same target was given to the two groups. But eventually, after a certain period of time, both group performance were high. Even though the control group, they did not have proper lighting or a space to produce their product, but anyhow, they also produced what they can maximum. That means both groups' productivity is equal. Then again, the Nelson Mayo has provided for the experiment group a lengthy rest period, and their salary also increased. But for the control group, Elton Mayo has asked to continuously work, as well as did not increase their salary. But then again, observe their performance. And again, Elton Mayo have noted that both group performance were high. Then Elton Mayo was really upset why these two groups' performance are equal, even though I did different kind of discrimination to the control group, but why they are performance, why their productivity is equal. Then Elton Mayo has investigated from the control group, because for both group they have provided two supervisors, okay? And then Elton Mayo has questioned from control group, even though I discriminated your salary, your rest period, then your number of lengthy work hours I have provided for you. I did not provide you proper lighting. I did not provide you proper space to produce the product. But why your group performance was high? At that time, the members of the control group said, even though even though our working conditions are not favorable, but we had a very good supervisor who always motivate us to work and always encourage us to do our level best. So that is a secret of our success. Even though we did not have proper working conditions within this factory, but we strictly determined to produce what we can, and we strictly determined to do our level best to give our fullest contribution for the betterment of the organization. Then Elton Myers have realized the importance of supervision. So Elton Myers has realized, if a person can make an impact of the cognitive processes of people, then automatically their behavior is somewhat very favorable. Elton Myers තේරුම් ගත්තේ පුද්ගලයෙකුට මොනතරම් වැඩ පරිසරයේ සුබවාදී නැති වුණත් හොඳ නැති වුණත් එයා පුද්ගලයේ ප්‍රජානිකාරයන්ට බලපෑම් කරන්න පුළුවන් පුද්ගලයෙක් හිටියොත් ඒ ප්‍රජානිකාරයන්, ඒ කියන්නේ එයාගේ අභිප්‍රේරණයට, එයාගේ මතකයට, එයාගේ for problem solving skills and for reasoning, if the particular person can make a different impact, then automatically that people behavior is so favorable to the community. ඒ වගේ එක්ස්පෙරිමන්ට් කරා. හරිද? එතකොට මුලින්ම කර ප්‍රකාශය තමයි වැඩ කොන්දේසි අනුව පුද්ගලයන්ගේ කාර්ය සාධනය තීරණය වේ. So that is a hypothesis. So after that, they have done the experiment using the experiment group and control group. Then later on, they come to the conclusion with the evidence, with the observation. Actually, working condition is no matter for the productivity of the people, but the very empathetic supervision is really critical for the person's productivity, because empathetic supervision make a very good, clear impact on the cognitive processes of people. Did you get my point? Is it clear for you? Is it clear for you?
Miss, can you tell me shortly what is the hypothesis shortly, because something...
Hypothesis, okay.
Yeah.
Hypothesis mean පුතේ, like hypothesis mean temporary true statement. Hypothesis is temporary true statement. తాවකාලික සත්‍යයයි උපකල්පනය කරන ප්‍රකාශය. So hypothesis is a temporary true statement. But even though it is temporarily true, with the evidence, with the experiment, with the observation, we try to accept or reject that statement. If that statement is accepted with our evidence, with our observation, then we can come to the conclusion about that hypothesis. Let's say like skin color matter, like let's say skin color matter for the beauty of the girl. කෙනෙක් පුද්ගලයෙක්ගේ හැමේ පාට ගැහැණු ළමයෙක්ගේ ලස්සනට හේතු වෙනවා කියලා අපි తాවකාලික සත්‍ය උපකල්පනයක් ගන්න. Then we randomly take girls out of a bunch, and then we are it's an experiment. Then we are ask somebody else to rank these girls according to the beauty. කොට තවත් කෙනෙකුට අපි කණ්ඩායමට කියනවා මේ ළමයිගේ ලස්සන අනුව මේගොල්ලෝම පෙරගස්සන. අපි දැන් තනින් තනින් තෝරගත්ත ගැහැණු දරුවන්ව ලස්සන අනුව පෙරගස්සන්න කියලා. It's now we are performing the experiment. So once we have ranked the girls, then the first place go to the dark skin color girl. එතකොට then through our experiment මේකේ rank කරලා තියෙන්නේ සුදු අනුව නෙමෙයි. ලස්සන අනුව. එතකොට කළු ගැහැණු ළමයි පාට අඩු ගැහැණු ළමයි මුල් පෙළේ ඉන්නවා. So therefore we come to the conclusion that skin color is no matter for the beauty of a girl. So likewise, a hypothesis is a temporary true statement about a phenomenon. Then after performing an experiment, we try to accept or reject that statement, that hypothesis. When we accept that hypothesis or when we reject that hypothesis, then we try to publish our finding to the general community. Okay? It's called hypothesis. Have I answered your question, Pute? Or do you need more clarification on it? Have I answered your question? Have I answered your question?
Yes, miss.
Okay. Okay, why is the scientific study of the human mind limited in the world? Because I explain why. Because it's really hard to study the human mind. It's really hard because it's really hard to observe the cognitive process of people. So therefore, it's really hard to scientifically study the human mind. Then why psychology is a social science we discussed? Because why psychology is a social science? Because even though we are talking about in psychology, individual behavior, please do remember in psychology we are focusing on individual behavior. තනි පුද්ගලයෙක්ගේ හැසිරීමයි අධ්‍යයනය කරන්නේ. But this individual behavior is influenced by a set of people, other people action. Because when we talk about social science, it's like we are focusing on about the society, the group of people. So even though we are talking about in psychology individual behavior, but we strongly know this individual behavior is affected by, influenced by other set of people's action and reaction. That's why we are telling psychology is a social science. Individual behavior is influenced and other people's action and thoughts in society also affect individual behavior. So that's why in social science, basically we are focusing about a set of people's action and reaction thoughts. So therefore, we believe that individual behavior is also affected by social science. So why we study psychology? We discuss for education purpose, to acquire the skill of questioning or criticizing, and some because in today's world, most business focus on competitive information, how we can motivate. Because in psychology, Pute, we are talking about different kind of cognitive processes, such as memory, then emotions, motivation, then intelligence, that kind of aspects will be discussed. So since businesses are now mushrooming, because of this globalization, there is a high competitive environment these businesses are running. So therefore, now organizations are searching how we can motivate people. Then psychology will help them. How we can increase the intelligence level of people. Then psychology help them. How we can increase the memory of the people. Memory means මතකය. අපේ නිෂ්පාදන ක්‍රියාවලිය පිළිබඳ මතකය වැඩි කරන්නේ කොහොමද? how we can help our employees to control their emotions, how we can increase the emotional intelligence of our workers. So likewise, now organization try to touch the soft side of people in order to gain the competitive advantage. දැන් ගොඩක් වට තරංකාරී වාසිය අත්පත් කරගන්න බොහෝ ගෝලීකරණය කළ බොහෝ ආයතන මිනිසුන්ගේ අපි කියන්නේ මුරුදු කුසලතා තමයි ස්පර්ශ කරන්න උත්සාහ කරන්නේ. මුරුදු කුසලතා කියන දේවල් තව කෙනෙකුට ඉමිටේට් කරන්න හරි අමාරුයිනේ, කොපි කරන්න අමාරුයිනේ. Like මුරුදු කුසලතා mean like commitment, loyalty, then citizenship behavior, like commitment, dedication, punctuality. So that kind of soft side can be highly focused on today's organization. So basically, when apart from that, organization try to study the cognitive processes of their employees as well. Why? Because they believe these cognitive processes of their employees are directly affected the work behavior within the organization. ආයතන තුල මිනිසුන්ගේ වැඩ හැසිරීමට, වැඩ සම්බන්ධයෙන් මිනිසුන්ගේ හැසිරීමට, වේගින් වැඩක් කරනවද, වෙලාවට පැමිණෙනවද කියන කාරණාවලට පුද්ගලයෙක්ගේ ප්‍රජානික කාර්යයන් බලපෑම් කරනවා. So therefore, in order to study these cognitive processes of their employees, psychology help them to increase students' scientific literacy. Because we know in psychology we are conducting scientific inquiry. Scientifically we study. So therefore this scientific literacy can be developed because of this when they study this psychology as a separate subject, and like to enhance student communication skills, because when we are dealing with psychology, definitely we have to focus on communication. We have to communicate with the other parties. Steps in scientific inquiry, like first we have to collect data, then we have to organize data. Like organizing data mean either ascending or descending. Example for organizing data is arranging data according to ascending or descending order. Then analyzing data. Analyzing data mean we try to get a representative picture. දැන් අපි දැන් දත්ත එක්රැස් කරනවා, දත්ත සංවිධානය කරනවා කියන්නේ සංවිධානය කරද්දී අපි ආරෝහණ අවරෝහණ පිළිවෙලකට හදනවා වගේ දෙයක්. කියන්නේ අර දත්ත පිළිවෙලකට හදනවා. Then analyze කරාම we try to get a representative value of the entire picture. දැන් අපි කියන්නේ පන්තියේ ළමයි 50ගෙම බර කියලා සාමාන්‍ය ළමයෙක්ගේ බර කිලෝ 50යි කියලා අපි තීරණය කරනවා. It's a result of analyzing data. Try to get a representative value. Okay. Then interpreting data. Then we try to interpret. We try to අර්ථකථනය කරන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා. We are telling the average weight of a student in grade 7 is 50 kilograms. That is the way we are trying to interpret, because we want to publish our finding to the general community. Therefore, we have to interpret our information. Then we have to do presenting and do some different kind of conclusion. So why I am list down these steps of scientific inquiry. So when we are scientifically study the cognitive processes and human behavior, these are the 5 steps we are following. We are collecting data about cognitive processes and human behavior. Then we try to organize them. We try to analyze them. Then we try to interpret our finding. And finally, we try to present and publish our finding to the general community. And why we study psychology as a separate subject, like it to understand where they are now, where we are right now. Sometimes when I'm teaching my dear students, I felt even though I'm teaching some points, I'm not very strong in that manner. සමහරට මම ගොඩක් දේවල් ළමයින්ට ඉගෙනුවට සමහරට මගේ මනසට කතා කරනවා මට මගෙත් ඒ දේවල් නැහැ නේද කියලා. So when we are studying psychology, when we are teaching psychology, we can understand where we are standing. Whether we are strong in motivation aspect, whether we are strong in memory, whether we are strong in intelligence, whether we are strong in controlling the emotional intelligence. So likewise, we can understand where we are standing. So at the same time, once we have gained an understanding where we are right now, then that knowledge will help us to behave in a future in a successful manner. දැන් අපි දැන් වර්තමානයේ අපි කොහෙද ඉන්නේ කියලා දැනගත්තම අපි strictly determine කරගන්නවා අපි අනාගතේ කොයි විදිහටද හැසිරෙන්න ඕනේ කියලා. So simply when once we have learned this psychology, it governs our future behavior as well. And to understand the diversity among people. අපි දැන් හැමතිස්සෙම හැම මිනිස්සෙම අපි වගේ වෙන්න ඕනි කියලානේ. So let's say I'm really motivated for the education. If I'm very dedicated for a certain work, I believe all people should be like that. No, it won't be happen. Will be discussed under the lesson called personality. People are diverse. Their thoughts, their emotions, their feelings, their behavior are totally different from one person to another. There is no identical two persons on this earth. Even the twins also differ. So once we study this subject, this nice subject called psychology, we start to appreciate diversity. මිනිස්සු විවිධයි. ඒ මිනිස්සු ඒ විදිහට හැසිරෙද්දී අපි උරණ කුපිත වෙන්න යන්නේ. එහෙම තමයි අපි ඒ මිනිස්සු එහෙම තමයි. ඒ නිසා අපි වගේ වෙන්න ඕනේ කියලා හිතන්නේ නැහැ. To understand the complex factors. Complex factors mean we try to understand both internal complex factors like thoughts, emotion, belief. And then we try to understand complex external factors. External factors, please underline external factors and write down observable factors. In here, external factors mean put the observable factors. Underline external factors and write down observable factors. Simply action and reaction of others that influence a person's behavior. Okay. Actually, history of psychology I gave you as a homework because it's a self-study area. In that PDF document which I have provided for you, also I nicely explain like nicely in a descriptive manner I have explained history of psychology. So actually, for your examination, I'm not give a very good weight for this area, but I strongly believe that you should have some kind of knowledge about this history of psychology. So that's why I have given in that PDF document. So this is self-study that area. It's really important. And I have explained separately all scholars' individual contribution for the development of psychology. And actually, out of these different scholars, we are highly focusing on the contribution of Sigmund Freud. Please highlight the Sigmund Freud because it's somewhat a very, very important scholar that we are discussing in psychology, because Sigmund Freud has introduced like three part of human mind, like conscious, pre-conscious, unconsciousness. Further, Sigmund Freud has explained the three components of personality: id, ego, superego. So likewise, then psychosexual stages, Sigmund Freud has explained there are 5 psychosexual stages of a person, like oral stage, puberty, likewise, different ages will be discussed. Likewise, we are acknowledging the contribution of Sigmund Freud and Abraham Maslow. Okay. So under the lesson motivation and personality, we'll highly discussing this scholar's contribution, Abraham Maslow's contribution. But Sigmund Freud's contribution will be discussed in lesson number 2 will be highly discussed. So in the next lesson, we'll be discuss Sigmund Freud's contribution. Okay. So this is his contribution. Topographic model of psychology, like how people mind organized, iceberg theory, and how personality organized of a person, id, ego, superego, and high psychosexual stages. මනුස්සෙක් කොහොමද මොන අවදීන් පහක් කරහා පුද්ගලයෙක්ගේ මේ සංවර්ධනය වෙන්නේ, පෞරුෂ සංවර්ධනය වෙන්නේ කියලා කතා කරනවා. oral, anal, phallic, latent, and genital. So don't worry about this term. This is a very simple concept. I'll be teaching all these in a very descriptive manner. Don't worry about it. Okay, so after this, this is for your like Sigmund Freud's contribution will be discussed. Like when we talk about Sigmund Freud contribution, he said like he has equaled, he nicely explained that individual mind has 3 important parts. පුද්ගලයේ මනස කොටස් 3කට බෙදෙනවා කියලා එයා කිව්වා. විඥානය, පූර්ව විඥානය, අවිඥානය. අපි කියන consciousness, pre-consciousness, and unconsciousness. So when we talk about, when you look at this iceberg, Pute, what is the biggest part of this iceberg? What is the most biggest part of this iceberg? What is the most biggest part of this
Unconscious.
unconsciousness level? Like simply in that unconscious level, basically in that part, actually we cannot recall yeah, information quickly. Actually, we cannot recall we cannot remember. අපිට අපේ මනසේ තියෙන කොටස තියෙන දේ අපිට මතක නැහැ සරලව කිව්වොත්. But that information, that experiences which are in that mind, that section, are directly affect for a person's personality. Like look at what are the example for consciousness? Like fears, බය වෙලා තියෙනවා පොඩි කාලේ මොකක් හරි දෙකකට. Then selfish needs, ආත්මාර්ථකාමී අවශ්‍යතා. Irrational wishes. Shameful experiences. Like shameful experiences mean පුංචි කාලේ අපි ගුරුවරයෙක් ගැතින් ලැජ්ජාවට පත් වෙලා තියෙනවා නම් that is negatively affected for a person's personality. Like unacceptable sexual desires. So that kind of things are really affected for a person's personality, even though it cannot be recalled quickly. කවදාකවත් මේ දේවල් අපිට කවදාකවත් මතකයට ගන්න බෑ. හැබැයි කෙනෙක්ගේ පෞරුෂයට බලපානවා කියලා කියන්නේ that is a very biggest part of human mind. But pre-conscious level mean memories and stored knowledge. But in pre-conscious level, අපි කියනවා that information not in our mind. Yeah, that information are in our mind. But not right now we are not thinking about it. මේ මොහොතේ අපි කතා කරමින් ඉන්නේ. හැබැයි pre-conscious level එකේ තියෙන දේවල් අපිට ආයාසයකින් සිහි කැඳවන්න පුළුවන්. That means if you want, you can recall it. Like let's say right now you don't know about your home address. But if I ask what is your home address, you can quickly recall it. Because it's in your memory. It is a stored knowledge. Let's say if I ask what you had for your dinner yesterday, right now you cannot remember. But when you memorize, you can remember, yes, I had a soup and two slices of bread. You can memorize it. You can recall it. That information are in your pre-conscious level. But when we talk about conscious level, that is the visible part of the iceberg, like thought and perception, right now you are in. Thought and perception, right now you are in. Then මේ මොහොතේ ඔබ ඉන්න සිතුවිලි. Right now, example, right now we are discussing about the 3 parts of individual mind. That information is in your conscious level. අපි කියන විඥානයේ කොටසෙදී මේ මොහොතේ අපි කතා කරමින් ඉන්න තොරතුරු. අපි පූර්ව විඥානය, that mean pre-conscious කියලා කියන්නේ පූර්ව විඥානය කියලා කියන්නේ අපි මේ මොහොතේ මනසේ නෑ. නමුත් අපට ආයාසයකින් සිහි කැඳවන්න පුළුවන්. Okay? It's a conscious level, pre-conscious level and unconscious level. Shall I give a small note on these 3 level or is it required? Shall I give a small note?
Yes, miss. Give me.
Okay, right now. According to Sigmund Freud, human mind have been classified. Human mind has been classified into 3 important components. 3 important components. Conscious level, otherwise consciousness, CONSCIOUS, consciousness. Second one, pre-consciousness. 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 Then third part is unconsciousness. 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 Next bullet. Consciousness is thoughts and perception. Thoughts and perceptions we are in right now. Example. Right now we are discussing three parts of human mind. Three parts of human mind introduced by Sigmund Freud. Okay. Then pre-consciousness. The pre-consciousness consists of the pre-conscious consists of anything that could potentially potentially that could potentially be brought into the conscious mind through retrieving retrieving retrieving. Example. Right now, you can't remember what you had for your lunch. What you had right now, you can't remember what you had for the lunch. Right now, you can't remember what you had for the lunch yesterday. Right now, you can't remember what you had for the lunch yesterday. But through recalling, it is potentially be brought into the conscious mind. Into the conscious mind. Like example, memories and stored knowledge. Okay, memories and stored knowledge. Then third point, unconscious. It is a storeroom of it's a storeroom of unacceptable. It is a storeroom of unacceptable or unpleasant feelings of pain, anxiety, or conflict that are outside of our conscious awareness. But this unconscious mind contains badly affected to a person's personality. Sigmund Freud, new paragraph. Sigmund Freud identified or explained these three levels. Sigmund Freud explained these three levels of mind, to an iceberg. The top of the iceberg, the top of the iceberg, which is above the water, the top of the iceberg, which is above the water, represents, which is above the water, which is above the water represents conscious mind, conscious mind, next, the part of iceberg, the part of iceberg that is submerged, that is submerged, that is submerged, 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 below the water, but is still visible, but is still visible, is the pre-consciousness, is the pre-consciousness. The bulk of iceberg, the bulk of iceberg that lies unseen, that lies unseen, beneath the water line, beneath, BENEATH, beneath the water line represents the unconscious mind. So write down few examples for unconscious. Write down a small topic called some of the way that how these unconsciousness affect the behavior of the person. අපි කියනවනේ කෙනෙක්ගේ මේ unconscious part එක ගේ හැසිරීමට බලපානවා කියලා. So simply like some of the ways these unconscious can affect the behavior of the people. Okay, write down. So now these are the ways, a few ways that how shows that how the unconscious part negatively affect the behavior of the person. Write down a subtopic. Some of the ways, some of the ways, some of the ways, some of the ways the unconscious, some of the ways the unconscious can affect, unconscious can affect behavior include number one, negative thoughts. Negative thoughts. That means always, because when we look at somebody, some people always they are come with negative thoughts. අපි කියන්නේ අම්මෝ එයා කතා කරොත් දෙයක් නොවෙන්නම තමයි කතා කරන්නේ. එයා කතා කරන්නේ අනිත් හරහටම තමයි. අනිත් පැත්තටම තමයි. වැඩක් නොවෙන්නම තමයි කියලා අපි කියන්නේ. That means negative thoughts. Actually that negative thoughts අපි arrogant වෙන්න හොඳ නැහැ. අපි කේන්ති ගන්න හොඳ නැහැ. We should not anxiety. We should not upset. Because we have to understand why that person is always come with negative thoughts, because in his childhood or in because he has experienced some kind of bad experiences. He has exposed to some kind of bad experiences, maybe in childhood. Then self-defeating thoughts. Another example is, another way is self-defeating thoughts and behavior. Self-defeating thoughts. මට කිසි දෙයක් කරන්න බෑ. මට ඒ දේවල් හිතෙන්නේ නැහැ. මට ඒව කරන්න ශක්තියක් නැහැ. Self-defeating thoughts. That means always try to undermine yourself. Self-defeating thoughts and behavior. මට දුවන්න බෑ. මට හයියෙන් දුවන්න බෑ. මට හයියෙන් ඇවිදින්න බෑ. Always නෑ බෑ තමයි කියන්නේ. Then feeling of anger. Third one is feeling of anger. සමහර අය හැමතිස්සෙම කේන්ති ගිහිල්ලා එන්නේ. මොන හරි කිව්වොත් බඩුවක් කරන් පොලේ ගහනවා. කෑ ගහනවා ගමටම ඇහෙන්නේ. ලැජ්ජ කරනවා කියලා අපි කියන්නේ සමහර මිනිස්සු ඉන්නේ. That's feeling of anger. අපි කේන්ති ගන්න හොඳ නෑ. අපි once we studied this psychology, we are not upset in front of these people. We have to understand these people are really feeling, they are feeling of anger. Why? Because they have exposed to some kind of negative thoughts when they are sometime maybe in their childhood. So then we can control our emotions, even though that the other person behaved in a very arrogant manner. That is a real beauty of studying the subject called psychology. මනෝවිද්‍යාව හදාරපු ශිෂ්‍යයෙක් විදිහට ඔබ කවදාකවත් අප්සෙට් වෙන්නේ නැහැ තව කෙනෙක් එක්ක. කේන්ති ගන්නෙ නැහැ. මිනිස්සු එහෙම තමයි. ඉතින් මිනිස්සු කෑ ගැහුවට, මිනිස්සු හැමතිස්සෙම රිනවාදී වුණාට, මිනිස්සු හැමතිස්සෙම නෑ බෑ කිව්වට ඔයගොල්ලෝ කුපිත වෙන්නේ නැහැ. Why? Because in psychology we have studied. You came to know that it's some kind of very bad experience in their life that they have made previously. Childhood behavioral problems. Childhood behavioral problems. So පුංචි කාලේ දෙමාපියෝ ඉඳලා නැහැ. පුංචි කාලේ දෙමාපියෝ හිටියත් ඈත් වෙලා තමයි ඉඳලා තියෙන්නේ. Childhood behavioral problems. And childhood behavioral problem. This is one of a way that unconscious can affect behavior. සමහරවල් පොඩි කාලේ හරියට මේ මුළු ගැන්විලා ඉන්නේ සමාජගත වෙන්න කැමති නෑ. හරි බයයි දේවල් වලට. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ කියන්නේ පුංචි කාලේ කියලා කියන්නේ ඉස්කෝලේ ගියාට පස්සේ දෙයකට ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. පන්ති මුල්ලට වෙලා හැංගිලා වගේ ඉන්නේ. Why? Because their childhood behavioral problems. Difficulties in interpersonal relationships. Some people, they don't like to move with the other people. They always appreciate isolated. They don't like to go for parties. They don't like to have some chats with other people. Like why? Because they are facing different difficulties in interpersonal relationships. ප්‍රේම කියන මේ මනුස්සෙක්වත් ආශ්‍රය කරන්න කැමති නැහැ. ගෙයි බිල්ලෙක් වගේ ගේ ඇසට වෙලාම ඉන්න කැමති. ඒතර අපි ඒ වෙලාවට කේන්ති ගන්න හොඳ නැහැ. අපි හිතන එයාගේ මොකක් හරි අඩුපාඩුවක් වෙලා තියෙන. එයාගේ අවිඥානයේ තියෙන මොකක් හරි දුර්වලතාවයක්. So the next one is difficulties in interpersonal relationships. And distressing pattern in romantic relationships. Distressing patterns in romantic relationships. Distressing patterns in romantic relationship කියන ආදරණීය විදිහට ඉන්නකොටනේ සමහර අය affair එක අද පටන් ගන්නවා හෙට නතර කරනවා. They stop that affair. Some people, very old people, they are searching very younger girls. පුංචි ගෑනු ළමයි තමයි බඳින්න හොයන්නේ වයසක අය. That means they have distressing pattern in romantic relationships. සමහර පුංචි ළමයි හොයන්නේ වයස ගැහැණු අයව බඳින්න. පුංචි පිරිමි ළමයි. Distressing pattern in romantic relationships. Why? Because there is a problem with the unconscious part. Unhealthy habits. Unhealthy habits. Very good example. Smoking. Drinking alcohol. මේ කියන්නේ chain smoker කෙනෙක්. Not smoking කියන්නේ සිගරට් එකක් දෙකක් බොන කෙනෙක් නෙමෙයි. Chain smokers ලා. Chain smokers. Drinking alcohol daily. Unhealthy habits. Also a part of, as a result of this unconscious behavior. Unhealthy habits. Distressing dreams. Distressing dreams. රැට දකින්න හීන හැමදාම මහා එක්ක මරනවා, ගහනවා, වැටෙනවා, තල්ලු කරනවා. Distressing dreams. Those are the few examples for some of the ways that unconscious can affect behavior includes. So, did you understand what I have given you, what I have explained you right now through this note?
Yes,
Is
Miss,
it
perfectly.
easy? Yeah, okay. Then unconscious, I'm not focusing on this, but this, yeah. Id, ego, and super ego. Id, ego, and super ego. Further, I will give you a small note on this aspect as well. Then after I'll share you some kind of video with you. Then, yeah. From that point, we can stop it. We can have a small break. Like simply write down a subtopic called psychoanalytical theory. Psychoanalytical theory. Psychoanalytical theory. Actually, psychoanalytical theory, like the three parts of human mind, which was introduced by Sigmund Freud. In here also, Sigmund Freud has nicely explained that a person's personality, simply person's personality mean puthe, personality mean how a person's appear to the external world. බාහිර පරිසරයකට පුද්ගලයෙකු කොහොමද පේන්නේ කියලානේ අපි කියන්නේ. Okay? So therefore, like personality කෙනෙක්ව අපිට කොයි විදියටද පේන්නේ? අපි කියන්නේ not only physical appearance. Okay? Physical appearance is only a small part of personality. කෙනෙක්ගේ ලස්සන උස නේ රූමත් භාවය, කඩවසම් භාවය කියලා කියන්නේ it's a part of personality. Okay? But in here we are focusing on sigma, like not only the physical appearance, but beyond that, the personality is comprised with physical appearance plus cognitive processes. අපි කියන්නේ soft skill, soft part එකත් මිනිසුන්ගේ touch කරන personality එක පෞරුෂය. පෞරුෂය කියලා කියන්නේ කෙනෙක්ට බාහිරට පේන විදිහ විතරක් නෙමෙයි. ඊට ඔබට ගිහිල්ලා ඒ පුද්ගලයාගේ මුරුදු ගුණාංගත් අපි ස්පර්ශ කරනවා. ඒ පුද්ගලයාගේ හැසිරීම, not personality is not only physical appearance, but it is all about behavior, cognitive processes, etc. Okay. Then Sigmund Freud, he has explained when we talk about a person's personality, he said this personality is comprised with three components of three main components. Okay, these three components of personality is id, ego, and superego. Okay, id, ego, and superego. Okay, so basically when we talk about id, ego, superego, basically when we talk about, I'll give a small note. Okay, just now please try to listen what I'm telling you. But when we talk about id, actually it's like it is the selfish part of human mind, human personality. අපි කියන්නේ පුද්ගලයෙක්ගේ පෞරුෂය ආත්මාර්ථකාමීම කොටස. So when we talk about it always focused on like selfish part of the personality. That means it always based on pleasure principle. Pleasure principle කියලා කියන්නේ හැමතිස්සෙම තමාව තෘප්තිමත් වෙන්න තමයි බලන්නේ. අනිත් කෙනාව නැසිලා ගියත් කමක් නැහැ, අනිත් කෙනාව මැරිලා ගියත් කමක් නැහැ. තමාගේ වැඩේ වෙනවා නම් that is all. That's why we are telling the id is the selfish part of human personality, human life. Id. Actually, when we talk about id, like simply, when we talk about id, like basically අපි කියන්නේ පුද්ගලයෙක්, id is the only component of personality that is present from birth. කෙනෙක්ගේ උත්පත්තියේ ඉඳලම පෞරුෂයේ තියෙන එකම කොටස id විතරයි කියලා කියන්නේ. That means simply we consider child is a collection of id. අපි කියන්නේ ලදරුවෙක් කියන්නේ id ගුලියක් කියලා අපි කියනවා. එම්කද ඒ පොඩි කාලේ ළමයාගේ තියෙන්නේ id කියන always try to satisfy their needs. අම්මා බත් එක අතර ගත්තත් කොහොම හරි යන්නලා කිරිබොණ්ඩ අන්ලන්න එයා කිරිබොන. අම්මා බඩගින්නේද කියන එක එයාට අවශ්‍යයි. එයාට දැනෙන්නේ නැහැ. So simply it's like that's why we are telling that අපි කියන්නේ පුද්ගලයෙක් උපතේ සිටීම පෞරුෂයේ තියෙන එකම කොටස id විතරයි. So therefore සමහර ළමයි ආත්මාර්ථකාමී විදිහට හැසිරෙනකොට අපි දෙමාපිය විදිහට we should not punish them. Why? Because we should understand that is the only part which has developed in their personality right now. Id. Simply, id is only the component of personality that is present from birth. Okay, actually in this part, we always try to satisfy our needs, our wants and our desire. We are not think about the other part. Like let's say example, if an increase in hunger or thirst should produce an immediate attempt to eat or drink. දැන් පන්තියේ ඔයගලන්ට බඩගිනි වුණාම ටීචර් පන්ති ඉන්නව නැද්ද කියලා බලන්න කාගෙන යනවා නම් අපි කියන්නේ you are, that means your id part is prominent. But when we talk about ego කියලා කියන්නේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් that is the rational part of human mind, human personality. Okay, rational part mean like ego is it developed from the id. Please do remember, ego is developed from the id, and simply we can say that ego is the personality component which responsible for dealing with reality. හැමතිස්සෙම යථාර්ථය එක්ක ගනුදෙනු කරන්නේ පුතේ ego කියන කොටස. Because it based on reality principle. Let's say now as an example, if you want to eat your lunch, eat your breakfast in a class, then if you ate, then it says your id part is prominent. But when you try to eat, then you are like, let's say when you feel that it is not good to eat in the class during the teaching time, therefore you decide not to eat in the class. If you are really hungry, then you go to the teacher and ask, I'm really hungry teacher right now, can I go out of the class and eat? It is the ego part. Ego is always try to based on the reality principle. යථාර්ථයක තමයි ගනුදෙනු කරන්නේ. Because when your ego part is strong, then you should know what you should do, when you should do, what you should do, with whom you should do it. ඔබගේ ego කියන මේ පෞරුෂ තාර්කික කොටස හැදෙනකොට ඔබ දන්නවා දෙයක් කරන්න ඕනේ කොයි වෙලාවෙද, කළ යුත්තේ කා සමගද, කරන්නේ කා කොහෙදද කියන කාරණා. So therefore, now scholars have identified this ego part is developed most probably after 3 years period. After 3 years period. ළමෙක්ට අවුරුදු 3න් පස්සේ තමයි පුතේ තාර්කික වෙන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ. In some books say it's like after 5 years, but most probably most books have highlighted the ego part of the personality is start to develop after 3 years period. Okay? Because it based on the reality principle. It govern your behavior according to the social acceptance. සමාජය පිළිගන්න විදිහට ඔබගේ හැසිරීම ක්‍රමවත් කරනවා. Ego. Simply it is believed to be the factor responsible for balancing between pleasure and pain. Pleasure කියන්නේ id part එක. එයා දන්නවා අපි දැන් අපිට ඕන දේ කරන්න ගියොත් අන්ති අවසානයේදී වේදනාවක් තමයි හම්බෙන්නේ. Why? Because teacher may punish you. That's why look at this sentence. It is believed to be the factor responsible for the balancing between pleasure and pain. If you try to get the immediate pleasure, because it always talk about immediate pleasure. ෂණික තෘප්තියනේ බලන්නේ. If you try to get the immediate pleasure by having your lunch in the class during the teaching time, then what will happen? Eventually, once you had your lunch, your teacher may punish you. Pain. So therefore, ego will help you to balance the pleasure and pain. Did you get my point? Is it clear? Is it clear?
Yes, miss.
Yeah. When we talk about superego is the simply superego mean always try to based on moral principle. Like moral principle mean it's go beyond ego. It's like you always try to be an exemplary person to the other people. You always try to be a perfect. අපි කියන්නේ මිනිස්සෙක් සර්ව සම්පූර්ණ වෙන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා. මිනිස්සෙක් තව කෙනෙක්ට ආදර්ශමත් වෙන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා. කියන්නේ super ego. Because when you go for super ego stage, like Normally it happens අර ජීවිතේ සිඳ සමය තමයි super ego වෙන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ එතනදී when you go to super ego stage in your personality, that like most of the time our grandparents, our achila siyala, they are in the super ego stage. Actually they are not rational, like they are not based on the reality principle, but always they try to work according to the social norms. සමාජයට ඕන ගන්න විදිහට, සමාජය පිළිගන්න විදිහට, සමාජය හරි කියනවා නම් කොච්චර ඒ රෙදේ වැරදි වුණත් ඒගොල්ලෝ හිතන්නේ ඒ විදිහටමයි. like let's say අපි කියන්නේ පවුලක ලොකු එක්කෙනා මොන වැරද්ද කරත් එයාට ගහන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද එයා වැඩි හිටියේනේ, ලොකුයිනේ. ඒ super ego. Super ego always respect the elder person of the family. But when we talk about the reality, even though the elder person, but if he or she committed a mistake, definitely we have to punish. Differently, parents should punish that elder person as well. Since in reality, she committed a mistake. But when we go for super ego stage, they believe it's not good to punish the elder person of the family. Why? Because he's the most elderly person in the family. Super ego. Actually, super ego always try to be, it's based on moral principle. It try to be a perfect person. Simply, in many books it says like most of the time, id and super ego having conflict. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට පන්ති ඛණ්ඩ ඕනේ කියලා හිතෙනවා. that is a id part. super ego කියනවා පිස්සුද පන්තියේ කණ එක හොඳ නෑ. ඒක සදාචාර සම්පන්න වැරදි. ගුරුවරයෙක් පන්තියේ ඉද්දි එහෙම කනවද? එහෙම කනවද? ඒක ගුරුවරයෙකුට කරන අවනම්බුවක් නේද? likewise perfect වෙන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා. So always id and super ego have a very bad conflict between id and super ego. So when there is a conflict in between id and super ego, මොකද id කියන්නේ හරිම ආත්මාර්ථකාමී කොට, super ego කියන්නේ පෞරුෂය, අපි කියන්නේ අර ආචාර ධර්ම සදාචාර සම්පන්නව සමාජයට හොඳයි කියන, අපි කියන්නේ අනේ යා බෝධිසත්වයෙක් වගේ, අපි කියන්නේ අනේ යා මේ දෙවි කෙනෙක් වගේ, අන්න super ego. So therefore always id and super ego having conflict. Always there is a conflict. So when there is a conflict, actually ego acts as a mediator in between these two. දැන් id කියනවා කුමාරි පන්තියේ කන්න ඕන. super ego කියනවා කන්න නම් එපා. ඒ කණ එක නම් හොඳ නෑ. ඒක ගුරුවරයාට කරන අවනම්බුවක්. ඒක කවුරුත් පිළිගන්න දෙයක් නෙමෙයි. super ego, that means conflict. Two totally different ideas. Then ego කියනවා එහෙම නෙමෙයි. අපි ටීචර් කෙන් අහලා ටීචර් කැමති නම් අපිට කන්න පුළුවන්. නැත්නම් අපි කියමු ටීචර් බඩගිනි. ඇත්තටම මම පන්තියෙන් එළියට ගිහිල්ලා කන්න. ego always rational, based on reality. But super ego always focus on ආචාර ධර්ම, සදාචාර සම්පන්න භාවය කියන දේ. So did you get my point? Is it clear? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
But when we talk about a personality, it's a combination of ego, super ego, and id. Actually, in my case also, I'm a combination of these three parts. But when we become adult, like after 12 years, actually the ego part of the personality is very prominent than id and super ego. Once we like let's say after 12 years, after when we become adult person, actually the ego part should be prominent always. But when we talk about like before 3 years, id part is very prominent. They are very selfish. They never tried like to give anything. පොඩ්ඩලමගේ සෙල්ලම් බඩුවක්වත් අල්ලන්න දෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ හිසියක් තව කෙනෙකුට දෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඔක්කොම බදා ගන්නවා, හංග ගන්නවා. තනියම කනවා. That is id. But super ego happens like when they come to retirement age. Okay? But it's again කියන්නේ super ego නරකයි නෙමෙයි පුතේ. Super ego හොඳයි, but always not based on the reality, but always try to based on the moral. Okay, so therefore when we talk about a person, it's a combination of these three parts. Okay, write down small note. Excuse me, give me 1 second. Very urgent call. Anyhow, write down, my dear student. After writing this, I'll give a small break for you. Write down. According to Sigmund Freud, human personality is complex. According to Sigmund Freud, human personality is complex. Human personality is complex and has and has more than a single component. And has more than a single component. It composed of three elements, more than a single component. It composed of three elements. It composed of three elements. It composed three elements. The id, it composed of three elements known as the id, the ego, and the superego. These elements work together, the id, the ego, and the superego. These elements work together. These elements work together. These elements work together to create complex human behavior. Complex human behavior. New paragraph. Each component adds its own unique, its own unique, OWN, on unique, UNIQUE, on unique contribution to personality, and these each elements emerges at different points in life. Please underline unique contribution at different points and further underline these elements work together. Don't believe that when we talk about personality, ego is only there. Super ego is only there. It is there. No, or it's well. When we talk about one personality, actually it's a combination of these three. But which one is prominent will decide the nature of the person. මේ තුනේම එකතුවකින් තමයි මිනිස්සුගේ ඕන මනුස්සයෙක්ගේ පෞරුෂය දෙන්නේ. මොන කොටසද ප්‍රමුඛ වෙන්නේ අනුව ඒ පුද්ගලයාගේ හැසිරීම තීරණය වෙනවා. සමහර පුද්ගලයෝ වැඩිහිටි වුණත් හරිම ආත්මාර්ථකාමී විදිහට හැසිරෙනවා. that mean යාගේ id part එක හරි ප්‍රබලයි. සමහර පුද්ගලයෝ සමහර දරුවෝ ඉන්නවා ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ ඊගෝ එකට වඩා සුපර් ඊගෝ වැඩි. අපි කියන්නේ නිකන් පඬිතයි වගේ කියලා. ඒකට අපි කේන්ති ගන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. Because that person's moral, they always try to based on moral principle. But some children, they are very rational. They always try to be genuine. They always focus on reality. That means their ego is very central than super ego. Okay, so don't believe only one part is there. දැන් හිතන්න එපා ඔයා හරියට ගොඩාක් ඉන්ට්‍රාවර්ට් හොඳට අනිත් අය ඉන්ට්‍රාවර්ට් නිසා මම සුපර් ඊගෝ කියලා හිතන්න එපා. ඔයා හරිය සෝෂල් කියලා ඔයා හිතන්න මම ඊගෝ මගේ ඊගෝ ප්‍රමුඛයි කියලා. නෝ. එහෙම කියන්න බෑ. but basically time to time, place to place, instance to instance, situation to situation, you are the which part the part the these element will become prominent time to time. Id. 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 Id is driven by the pleasure principle. Id is driven by the pleasure principle. Id is driven by the pleasure principle. අපි කියනවා සිංහලෙන් සුඛ වේදනා මූල ධර්මය. සුඛ වේදනා මූල ධර්මය. The id is driven by the pleasure principle. It is driven by the pleasure principle. And it is present from birth. And it is present from birth. When id is prominent, always try to satisfy. When id is prominent, always try to satisfy needs and wants without think of the others. Example. An increase in hunger, example, an increase in hunger should produce an immediate attempt to eat. Next subtopic, ego. Ego. It develops from the id. It develops from the id. ආත්මාර්ථකාමී වෙලා පස්සේ තේරුම් ගන්න ආත්මාර්ථකාමී වීම හොඳ නැහැ නේද? Then it says that now your ego part is developing. Ego develops from the id and based on the reality principle. Please write down this sentence in a red, in very another color. Please try to use another different color to write out this sentence. Ego direct to satisfy. Ego. Nafis, please mute your microphone. Okay. Ego direct to satisfy. Ego direct to satisfy its desire. Ego directs. Ego directs to satisfy its desire. It's mean ID apostrophe s. It gay ashav. Its desire in socially appropriate way. In socially appropriate way. ඉඩ්ගේ ආත්මාර්ථකාමී අවශ්‍යතාවය ඊගෝ ප්‍රමුඛ වන විට සමාජයේ පිළිගන්න ආකාරයෙන් තෘප්ත කරගන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා. බඩගින්න හරි බඩගින්න තෘප්ත කරගන්න පුළුවන්. අපි ටීචර් එකෙන් අහලා කමු. සමාජයේ කැමති ඒ විදිහට ගුරුවරගෙන් ඇහුවොත් ගුරුවරයෙක් බෑ කියන්නේ නැහැ. ඒත් අපිට කණ එකක් වෙනවා. බෑක සදාචාර සම්පන්නව තමයි ඊට කරන්නේ. Always ego help to satisfy its need but in a very socially desirable manner. Basically, next sentence, last sentence, ego helps to decide what to do, when to do. Ego helps to decide what to do, when to do, with whom it should be done, and how it should be done in a socially desirable way. සමාජයේ පිළිගන්න ආකාරයෙන් යමක් කරන්නේ කොහොමද කරන්නේ කා එක්කද කරන්නේ කොතනද කරන්නේ කියන දේ සියලු දෙයක්ම පැහැදිලි කරලා දෙනවා. In a socially desirable way. If you want to eat in the example, if you want to eat in the class, requesting permission from the teacher and requesting permission from the teacher if permission granted can eat. So let's take an example from organization context. Let's say now you are in a meeting. Okay, but now your supervisor or a top managers are they are preaching. They are telling, they are discussing very unnecessary information, very lengthy discussion is going on, but you are really fed up from these unnecessary discussions. But then your heart, your id part says, please get up and go out of the meeting room. Okay, you please tell that you want to go to the washroom and please don't return to the meeting again. So your id part is telling. But if your ego part is prominent, then you feel it is not nice. If even though it's very boring meeting, but it is not nice to stand and go out of the meeting right now. So however, you try to control your emotion and try to remain in the meeting until it ends. It's your ego part, rational. මීට් එක එපා වුණත් ඩ්‍රැග් වුණත් නැගිටලා යන එක හරි නැහැ මේ වෙලාවේ. ඒක නෙමෙයි මේ වෙලාවේ කළ යුතු දේ. That is not the thing what we should do at this moment. Even though it's a very boring meeting, you try to remain on your seat until it ends. It's your ego part. But if your id is prominent, බොරුවක් කියලා නැගිටලා washroom එකට ගිහලා ආය වගේ පැත්ත පළාතේ මීටින් එකට ඉන්නේ cubicle එකටලා ඔයාගේ වැඩක් කරගන්න. So think what kind of behavior you are demonstrating in your office, whether you are lying or go out of the meeting if it is unnecessary dragging is happening, or even though you are sitting on the seat until it ends. It determine the important part of your personality, either id or ego. Last topic, superego. Superego. Like simply when we talk about superego, actually some book says people try to internalize moral standards and I try to be an ideal person. Simply they learn, they acquire that these moral standards they have acquired from their parents and the society. So like our sense of right and wrong. හරි වැරද්ද කියන එක තේරෙනවා කියලා අපි කියන්නේ. හරි වැරද්ද තේරුම් ගන්න සදාචාර සම්පන්නව ජීවත් වෙන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා කියලා. So simply superego provides guidelines for making judgments. හැමතිස්සෙම දෙයක් තීරණයක් ගන්නකොට මොකක්ද නිර්ණායකයක් මත පදනම් වෙලා තමයි තීරණය ගන්න. හරිද? Like let's say write down. Superego hold moral standards acquire from superego holds moral standards which acquire from our parents and society. From our parents and society. Within bracket, our sense of right and wrong. Our sense of right and wrong. Our sense of right and wrong. Within close the bracket. වැඩි හිටිය තමයි අපිට හරි වැරද්ද උගන්වන්නේ නැහැ. වැඩි මේ දේ කරන්න එපා. සතුන්ට හිංසා කරන්න එපා. ඒක වැරදි දෙයක්. වැඩි හිටිය එකවම ගරු කරන්න. ඒක හරි දෙයක්. Superego provides guidelines. Superego provides guideline for making judgments. For making judgments. It control all ids IDS idge. It control all ids selfish needs and wants it control all its unacceptable needs and wants and struggle to make push ego to act upon moral principles than realistic principles. Moral principles than realistic principle. like this. Then simply අපි ඉතින් අපේ ඉද්ගේ ආත්මාර්ථකමේ අවශ්‍යතාව totally reject කරනවා. On the other hand, sometimes this super ego make an impact to this ego as well. Ego ටත් කියනවා please try to based on like push ego to act upon moral standards and not to based on reality principle. දැන් මෙතන වැඩිහිටියෙක් ගොඩක් හරි අපිට සරපාරුෂ විදිහට බැනලා ගියාම අපි සමහරට වැරදක් කරලා නැති වුණාමත් දැන් according to our super ego කියනවා don't scolded to that elder people. වැඩිහිටි කෙනාට බයින්ඩ් එපා. යා කොච්චර වැරදි වුණත් මොකද අපි සාමාන්‍ය වැඩිහිටියන්ට එහෙම කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. එහෙම බයින්නේ නැහැ. It's called moral principle. හැබැයි reality principle එක උනත් වැරද්දක් කරා නම් වැරද්දමයි. එහෙනම් එයා වැරදි කරොත් අනිවාර්යෙන් බැනුම් අහන්න ඕනේ වැඩිහිටියෙක් උනත් කියලා. That is a reality principle. But when we go to that moral principle කියනවා නෑ එයා වැරද්දක් කරත් එයා වැඩිහිටියෙක්නේ. සමාජය පිළිගන්නේ වැඩිහිටියෙකුට පොඩි කෙනෙක් බයින්නේ නැහැ කියලානේ. ඒ නිසා බයින්ඩ් එපා. You have to be very patient at this moment. Sometimes these super ego push ego to act upon moral principle than reality principle. කියලා කියන. Okay. Example. Please write down the last example. Then I'll give a small break for you. Like let's say, a man realizes that the cashier at the store, a man realizes that the cashier at the store forgot to charge him for one of the items he had in his cart. He returns to the store to pay for the item because his internalized sense of right, ඇතුලේ ගැබ් වෙලා තියෙන අපි කියන්නේ ලේබල් ට කා වැදිලා තියෙන internalized sense of right and wrong urge him to do so. අපි කපියස් මාකට් එකට ගියාම අපි වඩුවකට යම්කිසි අය කිරීමක් කරලා නැත්නම් අපි ගිහිල්ලා දැක්ක අපිට නෝට් වෙනවා අපි එකට සල්ලි අරන් නැහැ කියලා අපි ගිහිල්ලා කියන එක්සදාචාර සම්පන්නව තව මිනිස්සුගේ සල්ලියක් ගන්න එක හරිය නෑ කියලා අපි ගිහිල්ලා රිටර්න් අපිම ස්වේච්ඡාවෙන් ගිහිල්ලා සල්ලි ගෙවලා එනවා. Okay, it happens. Example for ego. Write down ego. Actually, we did not write down an example for ego. Imagine that you have stuck. S-T-U-C-K-E-D. Imagine that you have stuck in a long meeting at a work. Why I'm giving this example? Example will explain all this theoretical point in a practical manner. Okay? Imagine that you have stuck in a long meeting at work. You find yourself growing, increasingly hungry. You find yourself growing increasingly hungry. It compel you to jump. It compel you to jump up. It compel. It බල කරනවා යන්න seat එකෙන් නැගිටලා යන්න. It compel you to jump up from your seat. And have your lunch. And have your lunch. The ego guides you to sit quietly, and wait for the meeting to end. Wait for the meeting to end. Wait for the meeting to end. I believe the example what I have given you and the explanation that I have given you on id and ego and superego is clear for you. If you need any clarification, please ask. Is it clear for you? Is it clear for you?
Yes, I clear.
Okay. Actually, I have prepared a video. Actually, it's in Sinhala medium. I don't know whether you can understand because I have realized that some students are not Sinhala. So is it okay if I show you Sinhala video or to explain this concept? But if not, doesn't matter. I will show you videos in English, which are in English language. Which one is preferred? Which one is preferred? If you can't understand Sinhala, no worries at all. No, I will show you videos in English. Which one is preferred?
I think English better, miss.
Sorry, it's not clear for me, Pute. English or
I think
Sinhala?
English is better.
English is better.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, we'll give you a small...
Then daily miss.
Okay, okay. I can understand. Okay, no worries at all. Now time is 9:55. We'll give you a 10 minutes break. Let's meet sharp at 10:05. And actually, I'll end this lesson number 1. And let's discuss lesson number 2. Actually, before discussing lesson number 2, I'll share you with... in the chat box, I'll attach the second handout. I think, have I given you the second handout?
No, miss.
Yeah, very sorry for that. We'll give you second handout. We'll attach in the chat box second handout, and you can download it. And there is a supplementary note as well. There is a supplementary note as well. We'll attach that one as well. Please download which are in the chat box. Hope you can download it. I have attached 2 documents. Please check your chat box. Lecture number 2, that means PowerPoint presentation, plus supplementary note I have prepared for you, which comprised with defense mechanism and the psychosexual stages. I believe you can download them. Is it possible for you to download? Have you downloaded both of them? It's in your chat box. Are they downloadable? Try.
It's going on.
Okay. We'll give you a break right now. Then let's meet sharp at 10:10. Okay. Let's start the remaining part of the remaining part in lesson number 2. Okay. I think I have given you a supplementary note on lesson number 2, as well as this PowerPoint presentation. Just now I sent it to the chat, but I'll make necessary arrangement to send it to the LPEC. Not only the second lesson, but third and fourth lessons handout as well as because today actually I beg your pardon because I know it's really nice to have a hard copy when you come for the lecture. It's a must requirement, but anyhow I forgot that point. It's my mistake. Very sorry for that. But from next day onwards, I'll make necessary arrangement to send your handout prior to the session. So lesson number 2, defense mechanism and behavioral theory. That basically, this defense mechanism, let's try to understand what is meant by defense mechanism and why the behavioral theory, why in psychology has focused on behavior rather than focusing on cognitive processes. Actually, why likewise for that kind of things, let's try to have a discussion. Okay. So these are the intended learning outcome of this lesson. So at the end of the lesson, you should be able to understand different types of defense mechanism. What is meant by different defense mechanism? Why it is required? අපි කියනවා සිංහලෙන් සංරක්ෂණ ප්‍රයෝග කියලා. So why defense mechanism are required and what is meant by defense mechanism? What kind of different defense mechanism? What kind of techniques which can be adopted by a person as a defense mechanism? Let's try then. We'll try to explain the 5 stages of personal development, which was introduced by Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud has explained when a person is developing, when he is physically developing, when his personality is developing, he has to pass 5 important critical stages. Okay. Then after these 5 important stages, actually as parents, as adults, we have a set of responsibilities towards our children to develop their personality. So I'll be discuss all these, that mean adults' responsibility and parents' responsibilities in developing their children's personality. And so Sigmund Freud explained these are the 5 critical stages which should be highly focusing on in personal development. And later on, will be explain the relationship between rewards and punishments will be discussed. And as a manager, discuss the practical application of behavioral psychology to the work context. Okay, let's try actually. Let's try to understand what is meant by defense mechanism. සංරක්ෂණ ප්‍රයෝග කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා. So basically, when we talk about defense mechanism, as I told you earlier, when we are discussing the 3 important parts of personality, id, ego, superego, I have highlighted that it has very selfish needs. The id component of personality always try to satisfy very selfish needs, always try to focus on pleasure principle. But on the other hand, superego, which based on moral principle, always try to adhere with the moral standards and always try to work with which is right and which is wrong. accepted by the society. සමාජය පිළිගත්ත හරි වැරද්ද අනුව කටයුතු කරන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා කියන it's called superego. But when we talk about actually id and superego, both have totally contradictory or conflicting ideas. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ දෙපාර්ශ්වය දිහා බලනකොට මේ දෙපාර්ශ්වයට තියෙන ඇත්තටම හරිම ගැටුම් සහගත ඉල්ලීම් දෙකක්. ඉද්ගේ ආත්මාර්ථකාමී අවශ්‍යතාවය සුපර් තියෙන සදාචාර සම්පන්නව සමාජයට ඕන විදිහට හරි වැරද්ද අනුව ජීවත් වෙන්න. So when id and super ego have very totally different demands, time to time happens. දැන් හිතන්න අපිට හිතෙනවා මේ ඔක්කොම දාලා මෙන්න මේ ඔක්කොම ආත්මාර්ථකාමී විදිහට වැඩ කරන්න. හැබැයි තේරෙන්නේ අපේ හදවත කතා කරනවා හෘද සාක්ෂිය කතා කරනවා එහෙම කරන්න බෑ කියලා. So there is a conflict always. It happens always. So when there is a conflict between id and super ego, actually we are unconsciously අපි දන්නේම නැතුව we'll try to follow these different defense mechanism. අපි කියන මේ සංරක්ෂණ ප්‍රයෝග අපි දන්නේ නැතිවම අපි ක්‍රියාවට නගනවා. Okay? So ego deals with realistic demands, but id and the super ego make different demands. As I told you earlier, id have selfish demands, super ego have socially desirable demands, moral principle. And because of this, the ego become anxious. Ego is like the mediator in between id and super ego. අපි කියන ගෙරයට හවුවෙච්ච පුවක් ගෙඩිය වගේ. So ego is a person who should settle this situation, this conflicting situation. So therefore, what ego try to do is ego try to satisfy its need, this selfish need, in a socially desirable manner. That is the way ego try to manage both id and super ego. Did you get my point? Id have selfish needs. Super ego always try to work with socially desirable way. So ego as a mediator come to the middle of the road and try to satisfy its need in a socially acceptable way. කණ්ඩ හිතනවා පන්තියේ super ego කියනවා පන්තියේ කන එක හොඳ නැහැ. It's not good. It's not nice. It is not socially accepted. Then what ego tell? Ego ඉද්ගේ ආත්මාර්ථකාමී අවශ්‍යතාවය කෑම කන එක තෘප්ත කරගන්න උදව් කරනවා socially desirable way. If you want to eat, yes, let's go and meet teacher and try to get the permission and later on we can eat. So try to satisfy its need in a socially acceptable manner. Then both parties satisfied. Both party mean both id and super ego both are satisfied. But there are some instances where you cannot sometimes there are some instances where you cannot satisfy its need in a socially desirable manner. සමහර අවස්ථාවලදී මේ ඉදී ආත්මාර්ථකාමී අවශ්‍යතාවය සමාජයේ පිළිගන්න ආකාරයකින් අපිට ඉෂ්ට සිද්ධ කරන්න බැරුව ගියාම we try to follow this defense mechanism. Unconsciously we do it. අපි හිතන්නේ නැතිවම මේ සංරක්ෂණ ප්‍රයෝග වලට යනවා. Why? Because a person is failed to have a very good balance in between the demands which come from id and super ego's end. අපි කියන්නේ මේ සංරක්ෂණ ප්‍රයෝග භාවිතා කරන්නේ ඉද්ගේ ආත්මාර්ථකාමී අවශ්‍යතාව සහ super egoගේ සදාචාර සම්පන්න ඉල්ලීම් තුලනය කරන්න බැරුව ගියාම ego කාන්සාවටපත් වෙනවා. අපි කියන ego become anxious. Ego become frustrated. When ego could not be able to balance the different demands from id and super ego, then automatically this defense mechanism has to be adapted without conscious mind. හරිද? එතකොට අපිට පුළුවන් වුණොත් okay, ඊගෝට පුළුවන් වුණොත් very nice, but ඊගෝට නොහැකි වුණොත් then definitely they have to go for this defense mechanism. Okay? Write down simply, it's like simply this defense mechanism are behaviors that people use to separate themselves from unpleasant event, action and thoughts. අපි අකමැති අමිහිරි අප්‍රසන්න සිතුවිලි ක්‍රියාකාරකම් වලින් ඉවත් වෙන්න මිනිස්සු නොදැනුවත්වම කරනා ප්‍රයෝග තමයි පුතේ සංරක්ෂණ ප්‍රයෝග කියලා කියන්නේ. හරිද? Okay, we'll discuss. There are different types of defense mechanism. You will understand. Okay. write down a very small definition, introduction and defense mechanism. Defense mechanism are behaviors. Defense mechanisms are behaviors defense mechanism are behaviors that people use to separate themselves, that people use to separate themselves, people use to separate themselves from unpleasant events, actions or thoughts, action or thoughts, action or thoughts. Again, I will tell you, defense mechanism are behaviors. Defense mechanisms are behaviors that people use to separate, that people use to separate themselves, people use to separate themselves from unpleasant events, action or thoughts, full stop. The process is, these mental processes, defense mechanism are like, these are simply they are mental processes. Okay. These mental processes are usually unconscious. Okay. Let's try to understand what one by one. Repression. So repression, simply what we try to do is, repression mean we try to deliberately, hita matama, try to forget in painful, unpleasant memories that bother the person. Okay, that bother the person. So basically, what we try to do is, we try to forget very painful memories that bother the person. Okay, like simply it's withdrawal from consciousness of an unwanted idea. තමන්ට මගාරින්න ඕන අයිඩියා එකක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒක අපි හිතාමතාම අපි අදහසින් ඉවත් වෙනවා කියන දේ. Okay? So simply, let's say, like sometimes during our childhood, some teachers have punished us in a very serious manner. පුංචි කාලේ අපිට ගොඩාක් ගහපු ගුරුවරයෙක් ඉන්නවා නම් අපි ඒ ගුරුවරයාව හරිම අමිහිරි මතකයක් තමයි අපිට තියෙන්නේ. Actually, we have very unpleasant memories about that teacher because he or she always punished me without any reason. So therefore, actually, I have very unpleasant memories when I was dealing with that teacher. So therefore, what I try to do is, I try to repress I try to repress that I try to repress that very unpleasantable memories in my mind. හිතාමතා මම අමතක කරගන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා කියන දේ. So basically what we try to do is we try to forget that incident purposefully. Then the other one is asceticism. So basically what we try to do is we try to losing focus on one aspect of life and focusing on something else. Avoid facing reality. Avoid facing reality. Avoid facing reality means සමහර වෙලාවට අපි කියලා කියනවා sometimes we believe අපි කියනවා මේ like අපි මිත්‍යාවකට ඇලී ගැලීම උත්සාහ කරනවා. දැන් අපි කියන්නේ I try to smoke because every problem can forget I can forget every problem in my life when I am having alcohol or when I am smoking. Losing focus on one's aspect of life and focusing on something else. Avoid facing reality. Okay? Simply. What you can tell is example for that is you try to be a chain smoker because you tell that it's really happy for my life because I can forget every problems in my life. Then sublimation. Sublimation, the meaning of sublimation means like present unacceptable impulses in a form acceptable to society. Okay. Actually, I have shared with you a supplementary note just now. Let's try to, because in that one, there are nicely explained all that. Let's, yeah. I believe you can see this handout. Defense mechanism in psychology. So basically, when we talk about this defense mechanism, they are psychological strategies. Simply, those are psychological strategies. Further, you can underline the psychological strategies and write down. Those are cognitive processes as well. Prajanandika karan, manasika kriyavali. And unconsciously used to protect a person from anxiety arising from unacceptable thoughts or feeling. අපිට පිළිගත නොහැකි අපේ සිතුවිලි හැඟීම් ආවම එයින් ඇතිවන තරහව අපිට පාලනය කරගන්න පුළුවන් තරහව මුදාහරින්න පුළුවන් ප්‍රයෝග තමයි පුතේ සංරක්ෂණ ප්‍රයෝග කියලා කියන්නේ. Simply we can why we are using this defense mechanism because actually those are psychological strategies. We are unconsciously use them for what? To protect a person from anxiety arising from unacceptable thoughts or feeling. Because simply we can forget our unacceptable thoughts and feeling when we are using this defense mechanism. Let's see what kind of unacceptable thoughts and feelings we can avoid as a result of using these psychological strategies. According to Sigmund Freud theory, defense mechanism involve a distortion of reality in some way so that we can better cope with the situation. Okay, සමහරවිට සිග්මන්ඩ් ෆ්‍රොයිඩ්ට අනුව කියනවා අපි ගොඩක්කට යථාර්ථය අමතක කරලා අපි පවතින තත්ත්වයක් එක්ක ගනුදෙනු කරනකොට බොරු කියන්නත් වෙනවා. බොරුත් කියනවා. වැරදි මිත්‍යා මතවලට ඇලීලා ගැලිලා ඉන්නවා. හැබැයි අපි මේ හැමදේම කරන්නේ අර අපිට we try to avoid that unacceptable thoughts and feelings. අපි පිළිගන්න අකමැති දුම්බීම අපේ ශරීරයට අහිත කරයි කියන එක. Because we don't like to accept that thought and feeling, therefore අපි ඒක පිළිගත්තොත් අපිට ලොකු පීඩනයක් එනවා. දුම්බීම ශරීර දුම්බොන කෙනෙකුට දුම්බීම ශරීරයට අහිත කරයි කියලා පිළිගත්තොත් ලොකු වේදනාවක් දැනෙනවා. ඒක ඒ වේදනාව මග අරින්න ඒගොල්ලෝ මොකද කියන්නේ දුම්බිව්ව මට ලෝකේ හැම ප්‍රශ්නයක්ම අමතක වෙනවා. So look, a very good example for it. Okay, you would use to protect a person from anxiety arising from unacceptable thoughts and feeling. පිළිගන්න අකමැති දුම්බීම හොඳ නැහැ කියන එක. ඒ නිසා එහෙම පිළිගත්තොත් ඇතිවන කාංසාව මග හරින්න එයා එක එක ප්‍රයෝග පාවිච්චි කරනවා කියලා. So according to Sigmund Freud, defense mechanism involve a distortion of reality. That means we try to forget the reality. යථාර්ථය අමතක කරලා අපි හැමතිස්සෙම we try to cope with the situation, either in an ethical or unethical manner. Look, there are different, actually in this there are 6 mechanisms have been explained with example. Okay, repression. Repression I have explained, like we purposely try to forget the unpleasant memories and memories and experiences. The teacher's example which I have shared with you few minutes ago. Repression is an unconscious mechanism. All actions or all defense mechanism are unconsciously we are doing. Mechanism employed by the ego. Always remember, these defense mechanisms are used by the which part of the personality? These defense mechanisms are used by which part of the personality? Which part of the personality? Ego. Ego is the personality part which use this defense mechanism. That's why I told you at the initial stage, there are demands come from id, and there are demands come from superego. So superego, then ego try to balance these conflicting arguments, conflicting demands. When ego fail to satisfy both demands which come from id's end and superego's end, then ego try to use defense mechanism unconsciously. මං සිංහලෙන් කියනවා නම් ඉද්ගේ ඇතිවෙන අවශ්‍යතා සහ සුපර් ඊගෝගෙන් ඇතිවෙන අවශ්‍යතා එකිනෙකට පරස්පර විරෝධී. ඒ පරස්පර විරෝධී පුළුවන් නම් ඊගෝට දෙන්නම තුලනය වන ආකාරයෙන් විසඳුමක් ලබා දෙන්න ඉද්ගේ අවශ්‍යතා තෘප්තිමත් කරන්න එතනදී අපි කියනවා defense mechanism එක ඊගෝට ගන්න ඕනේ. But there are some instances ego fail to satisfy the requirement of the id in a social desirable manner, because there are some instances ego could not be able to satisfy both mean id and superego's need. In that situation, ego used defense mechanism to avoid the anxiety which arise from these conflicting demands. Okay. So therefore, if you cannot understand, try to find out there are many more examples and ebooks are there. This is the very simple way what I can tell you. Sinhaleng onna කියන්නත් පුළුවන්, English ලින් කියන්නත් පුළුවන්, but that is the simple meaning. Description means repression is an unconscious mechanism employed by the ego to keep disturbing or threatening thoughts from becoming conscious. අපේ පියවිසියට එන අර අපේ කියන්නේ මහා මිහිරි අත්දැකීම් අපේ පියවිසියට එන එක වළක්වනවා කියන දේ. During the Oedipus complex, aggressive thoughts about the same-sex parents are repressed. Okay. So example that I have show, you can write down the example, the teacher's story. If a teacher is punished in her childhood, then actually a person did not like to recall the name of that teacher as well. That means we try to unconsciously, we try to forget that unpleasant memories. Actually, those memories are going to the unconscious part of human mind. Then denial. Denial involves blocking external events from awareness. If some situation is just too much to handle, the person just refuses to experience it. Like let's say sometimes, for example, smokers may refuse to admit to themselves that smoking is bad for their health. Okay? Then the blocking external events from awareness. If some situation is just too much to handle, the person just refuses to experience it. එයා පිළිගන්න කැමති නැහැ. එයාට දුම්බීම හොඳ නැහැ කියලා. ඒ නිසා එයා මොකද කරන්නේ? එයා කියනවා දුම්බීම ජීවිතයේ සියලු ප්‍රශ්න අමතක කරනවා කියලා. Okay? Then how ego try to balance these? What ආත්මාර්ථකාමී අවශ්‍යතාවය it is smoking. Then super ego telling it's not good to smoking. Always. It's not, smoking is totally prohibited. It's not accepted by the society. That is the superego's demand. Then ego cannot do it because it want to smoke, but superego tell, no, you can't smoke because it's totally prohibited. It is not accepted by the society. So ego cannot satisfy its need in a social desirable manner. So what ego can tell is, ego try to tell that when I'm smoking, my all pains can be forget. So likewise. Then projection. But all this happens unconsciously. Projection. So simply projection means involves individuals attributing their own unacceptable thoughts, feeling, and motive to another person. Like, let's say, very simple example. Let's say there are two friends. One friend said, let's try to cut the class and let's go for a movie. Okay, then the second friend also agreed and both went to see the cinema. But during the intermission, one of a teacher has visited to this cinema and she has noted that two school children are in the cinema theater. So therefore, when in the next day, then when she caught these two children and asked why you were in the cinema during that time, you had after school classes. I know it's pretty sure, but both of you in the cinema, why you have done it? Then projection, then the second friend said, actually teacher, I don't like to go for that, but my friend forced me to go there. Look, this involves individual attributing their own unacceptable thoughts, feeling and motive to other person. තමා පිළිගන්න කැමති නැහැ තමන් සිනමා එක බලන්න ගිය එක වැරදි වැඩක් කියලා. ඒ නිසා තමාගේ වැරද්ද එයා මොකද කරන්නේ? තව කෙනෙක්ට ඇඟට තියනවා. You might hate someone, but you superego tell you that such hatred is unacceptable. You can solve the problem by believing that they hate you. Okay? ඉතින් මොකද කියන්නේ? වෛර කරන එක හොඳ නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ කියනවා එහෙනම් ඔයා විශ්වාස කරන ඒගොල්ලෝ මට වෛර කරනවා කියලා පැසි ඉන්නවා කියන වගේ දෙයක්. Then displacement. It satisfies an impulse with a substitute object. Displacement means like very good example, displacement mean බලය අඩු පුද්ගලයෙක් වෙත අපගේ ආතතිය මුදා හැරීම කියන දේ. So the very good example satisfying the aggression with a substitute object. In most of the cases, sometimes we have noted our fathers came home and shouted to Amma after working. ගෙදර ආවට පස්සේ අම්මට කෑ ගහන වැට්ට ගිහිලා ආවා. හැබැයි වෙලා තියෙන්නේ තාත්තා had a conflict with the boss, but තාත්තා cannot scold boss. What Tata do is Tata come home and scold to Amma. What Tata try to do is Tata try to release his anxiety, aggression with a substitute object, mean Amma. Someone who frustrated by his or her boss at work may go home and kick the dog. Kick the dog, balata gahanama, එහෙම නැත්නම් scolded to his wife or hitting children, etc. ගෙරි මොකද වෙන්නේ දැන් එතනදී ආත්මාර්ථකම අවශ්‍යතාවය තමයි බොස් මට බැන්නවා. ඉතින් බොස්ට මම බයින්න ඕනේ. හැබැයි සදාචාර සම්පන්නව මට එහෙම බයින්න බෑ. බොස් කියන්නේ මට වඩා සීනියර් එක්කෙනෙක්. ඉතින් කාගෙන ඇවිල්ලා ගෙදර ඇවිල්ලා what they try to do is they try to catch the substitute object or other party. It's called displacement. මේව දේවල් අපි කරන දේවල් නේ. අපේ වැරද්ද තව කෙනෙක්ගේ ඇඟට දාන එක, අපිට ඕන දේ කරගන්න අපි ඒවා ජස්ටිෆයි කරන එක, අර ස්මෝකින් කතාව වගේ. තව විදිහකට අපිට තව කෙනෙක් උහිල කෙනෙක් බැන්නම අපි ඒක අපි කියන්නේ අඩුතනින් ගලාගෙන යනවා කියලා. ඒ වැඩේ අපි කරනවා. අපි කියන්නේ සමහර අමිහිරි ටීචර්ලගේ අත්දැකීම් අපෝ මතක් කරන්න දෙත්වා මම ඒව අමතක කරලා තියෙන්නේ මම ඒව ආයේ ඉන්නේ නැති තැන විදිහටම I have removed, I have deleted in my memory. Likewise, normally we use that kind of things. Then regression. Regression this is a movement back in psychological time when one is faced with stress. Regression. So simply regression mean like This is a movement back in psychological time when one is faced with stress. A child may begin to suck their thumb again, ඇඟිල්ල උරනවා, or wet the bed when they need to spend more time in the hospital. සමහර පුංචි කාලේ ළමෙක් පිස් දානවා ඇඳේ ඒක ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෑ. නමුත් ටිකක් ලොකු වුණාට පස්සේ ළමයි ඇඟිලි උරනවා. හදිස්සියේ ඉස්පිරිතාලේ ඒගොල්ලන් ඇඩ්මිට් කරොතින් ඒ ඉස්පිරිතාලේ ඇඩ්මිට් කරාම ඒ ළමයෙක් අර ගෙදර වගේ නැති නිසා ඒ ඇඳේ චූ දානවා. ඒ වගේ දේවල් කරනවා. It's regression. So this is a movement back in psychological time. Movement back. ආයි පිටිපස්සට යන ළමා කාලට යනවා. When one is faced with stress. ඉස්පිරිතාලේ ඉන්න එක stress එකක්. So therefore එයා එයාගේ ළමා කාලට ගිහිල්ලා ආයේ කරපු දේවල් කරනවා. Sublimation. Sublimation mean like sublimation කියලා අපි කියන්නේ simply satisfying the aggression or anger with a substitute object in a socially acceptable way. සමාජයේ පිළිගන්න ආකාරයකින් තමාගේ තරහව පිට කරනවා. දැන් ගෙදරilla අම්මට කෑ ගහන එක සමාජයේ පිළිගන්න ආකාර නෙවෙයිනේ. ඒක වැරදි. නමුත් under sublimation what we try to satisfy our anger with a substitute object but in a socially acceptable manner. Then the very good example is like let's say when I was hated by, when I was accused by my senior guys in my workplace, I cannot shout them. It's not socially acceptable. But it cannot be done since I'm a junior person. What I do is I come home. Sometimes I write a poem. Sometimes I write a letter. Sometimes I posted in FB to blow my steam. කෙනෙක් එහෙම කරනවා නම් එයාට වඩා ජේෂ්ඨ කෙනෙක් එයාට බැන්නොතින් එයා මොකද කරන්නේ? එයාගේ තරහව එයා තව කෙනෙක්ගේ පිටින් යවනවා. හැබැයි සමාජයේ පිළිගන්න ආකාරයෙන් Facebook එකේ post එකක් දාලා. එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ කවියක් ලියලා අපි hint එකක් pass කරනවා කියලා කියන්නේ. සමහර අය පොත් ලියනවා. තව කෙනෙක්ට රිද්දන්න පොත් ලියනවා. ඒ කතන්දරයේ අනුසාරයෙන්. කවි ලියනවා. So likewise, sport is an example of putting our emotion into something constructive. Like let's say if you want to hit then you try to become a boxing player. කාටරි ගහන්න ඕන නම් boxing ගහන්න යනවා. එතකොට boxing එකේ අර ඒ punch කරන එකට ගහලා හිතනවා ආයෙ එයා තමයි ඉස්සරහා ඉන්නේ කියලා. We try to release the anger in a socially acceptable manner. කවුරුත් boxing punch කරා කියලා කවුරුත් බයින්නේ but we believe that මේ ඉන්නේ අර මගේ තරහකාරය කියලා හිතාගෙන ගහනවා. So likewise that kind of things can be happen. So likewise, actually, I can tell you, my dear students, all these defense mechanisms are adapted by ego, but in an unconscious manner. But when I'm discussing all these 6 mechanisms, please, I'm pretty sure you and me all are doing this, all are following this defense mechanism because sometimes we could not be able to satisfy our selfish needs in a socially acceptable manner. So if a particular person cannot satisfy their selfish needs in a socially acceptable manner, in most of the time we try to use this defense mechanism. So that is why defense mechanism is required. When you cannot satisfy your selfish needs in a socially acceptable manner, people are using this defense mechanism. So that's why ego, since ego is the middle or a mediator in between id and superego, so ego is using this defense mechanism unconsciously to balance id and superego. When ego is failed to balance id and superego, automatically unconsciously ego use this defense mechanism. So I have explained all these defense mechanism in a very detailed manner, one by one. You can read them. I have provided an example for denial as well. Like let's say denial is a defense mechanism. Like if a situation is too much handled, the person may respond by refusing to perceive it to do a denying it is existing. A smoking case. Many people use denial in their everyday life to avoid dealing with painful feeling or areas of their life they don't wish to admit. මං කැමති නැහැ මට තරහ යනවා කියලා පිළිගන්න. මං කියන්නේ තරහ ගත්තාම මට මගේ තියෙන ඇඟේ තියෙන ඔක්කොම දේවල් මට රිලීස් කරගන්න පුළුවන් තරහවත්. සිගරට් බිව්වම ඔක්කොම දේවල් දුක තුනී වෙනවා. අරක්කු බිව්වම දුක තුනී වෙනවා. Likewise, what they try, they're dealing with painful feeling or areas of their life they don't wish to admit. For example, a husband may refuse to recognize obvious sign of his wife infidelity. A student may refuse to recognize their obvious lack of preparedness for an exam. Can repression. So example, I have provided projection, displacement, regression, sublimation, apart from the example that I have highlighted before. And then rationalization. Actually, I did not talk with you rationalization. Rationalization means many great artists. Rational formation means believing the opposite is a psychological defense. Like simply, conscious behavior adapted to overcompensate for the anxiety a person feels regarding their socially unacceptable unconscious thought or emotion. Simply, rational කියනගෙන තාර්කික වෙනවා කියලා තමයි අපි කියන්නේ එතනදී. Like psychotherapists often observe reaction formation in patients who claim to strongly believe in something and become angry at everyone who disagree. Okay. Rational කියන්නේ අපි තාර්කික වෙනවා කියන කාරණා. So read this introjection, identification is there. So likewise, read one by one. It's really needed. Okay.
Okay, Miss, let's share these slides to our Telegram group. That's better.
Yeah, actually, the thing is, since I have already sent it to the chat groups, after this lecture, I'll send it to the LPEC to forward it to you. Not only lesson number 2, my dear student, I'll send you the lesson number 3 as well, and it's not as well. Then you can get the printout and keep it with you. Okay. So simply, sometimes you may feel, sometimes you may feel that these terms are very technical terms are there. Sometimes the ideas are not very clear, vague. It happens, Pute. It's because psychology, there are many more technical terms. But the very important thing is you have to read. You have to read more and more. Try to understand the concept using different examples. That's why I thought to provide this supplementary note. Otherwise, just giving that PowerPoint presentation is much more sufficient for you. I can ask you to self-study. But why I give this supplementary document? Because in this supplementary document, I have clearly explained all these like defense mechanism one by one. And I have provided example in a very detailed manner. So you can read them. So if you have any confusion when you are studying, please come to me. I'll explain, I'll clarify it as much as I can. But if you are not familiar with this term, and if you feel that you're not familiar with this term and this subject is very, very hard for you, and it's really hard for me to do this subject, please try to avoid that mentality. Because if you still right now you are in the second lesson, because there are many more we have to go, like there are 15 lessons we have to cover. So from the beginning onwards, you have to prepare for the lesson because you have sufficient time. Please try to make your own short note. Please try to study according to timetable. I know because you may work in right now. Sometime you may have returned home like 1 hour ago, or 2 hours ago, or 3 hours ago. You may feel tired. But please do remember, my dear student, formal education, acquiring formal education is an investment for your life. Because even though you are suffering right now, but the harvest can be yield. That means you can get the harvest in future time, definitely. Because I witness for that. You can have a very good life. You can spend a very good life while you are helping with the other people who need your help. You can help your parents. You can help your sisters and brothers or a general community, your relatives, neighbors, etc. if you studied well. So therefore, please don't give up this course. Please don't tell that this subject is very hard and don't murmuring. Try to read. So once you read or once you listen to this recording, automatically it come to your blood. Then you can understand. If you can't understand, in next day, please come and ask from me. It's called learning. So don't believe the things what I'm telling you in the class is true and accurate. It does not mean that I am lying here. These informations are very true, accurate. But learning is not like that. Spoon feeding is not learning. So you have to revise by yourself. You have to find out information time to time. You have to read more and more. And then if you can't understand further, please come to me. Miss, this point is not clear for me. Can you elaborate it further? I'll do it. 1,000 times also I'll do it. But because today we have learned different kind of English terms like defense mechanism, like ego, superego, conscious, unconscious, and pre-conscious. And now, just now we have discussed about repression, sublimation, displacement, identification, projection, regression, denial. So likewise, many more technical terms you have learned today. So taking those technical terms in your mind and perceive that this subject is difficult will not make a sense for you. So strictly determine, I will learn this subject with my utmost good faith, I will do my level best. Because there are many more children have scored A grade for this subject. The secret of their success is still English medium batch, you are the second batch. The first batch, their examination will be held on next month. But one Sinhala batch has recently completed their exam. They successfully faced their examination. And what they have actually many more, like 75%, not 75%, 90% they have passed this exam. But like out of like around 40%, 50%, they have scored A grade, A or A minus. Because why? The secret is I teach all of them in an equal manner, but they personally exerted their effort to study this subject. When I'm discussing exam focus question, they come to me and they ask from me, Miss, why it is happening? So how it should be done? Why can't it happen like this? So likewise, they are very critically asking question. So when you're asking question, you can clarify where you are, you can understand where you are standing right now. Otherwise, like අන්දගොළු බිහිරි මඩුවෙන් වගේ වචනයක්වත් කතා නොකර lecture එකේ ඉන්නවා. I'm not blaming you. I just request from you, please try to, because you have paid for this course. You have right. You should talk. You should explain. You should tell. If you can't understand, means it's not clear for me. I'm not scolding. අර මගේ මූණ ටික වස වගේ පෙවුනට මම වේගෙන් කතා කරාට I'm not like that person. So if you want to, I will explain again and again, because I came here to teach you. So strictly determine, just now we have started lesson number 2, but lesson number 2 also we have discussed on defense mechanism. We have discussed, in next day we have discussed stages of psychosexual development. So it's somewhat very, very important topic that we have to cover. We have to discuss behavioral theory. So since the scope you have to study is very narrow, try to be very strong in the area where we have studied right now, where we learn up to now. Then eventually, day by day, the heap of the knowledge is increasing. So therefore, if you are starting your learning process or learning process right now, so after 5th lesson, 6th lesson, there are many more you have to study. Don't take unnecessary burden when you are studying. Try to release your anxiety, because while you are working, you have to study. It's a real challenge. But don't try to be upset, or don't try to be like depressed because of this degree. Try to enjoy it. You can enjoy this degree if you are studying from the very first day onwards. Okay, since English medium is not difficult, doing English medium psychology is very, very easy than learning Sinhala, because the Sinhala මේ වචන හරිය අමාරු. සංරක්ෂණ ප්‍රයෝග කියලා කියනවා, උත්කර්ෂණය කියලා කියනවා, අවරෝධනය කියනවා, තපස් බව කියනවා. So it's really hard to learn, but it's really easy for us to learn in English, because in English easily we can understand. So therefore, I kindly request from you to self-study. Make your own timetable. Make your short notes. And through your group, try to share your short notes with the other people. මේ degree වල 1 2 3 තෝරන්නේ කවුරුත්. If you all five wrote the answers in a perfect manner or in a very good manner, I give A grade for all 5 students. No worries at all. There is no 1, 2, 3, 4 in the class. So if you shared your knowledge, if you shared your short notes, you will never lose anything. Because you can get an A grade and simultaneously your friends also can get an A pass. It's a blessing for you. It's a blessing for this journey. I experienced it. When I was in the university, I personally supported, I did different kind of tutorials to my batch mates. That's why I became the batch top in 2009. Because their blessings always there for me. When I know something, I always like teaching you right now. I taught them. So therefore, share your knowledge, share your accumulated information on different topics what we have so far. But what I want to tell you is, my dear student, try to start this learning process. Don't think still we have done only 2 lessons or we have many more weeks to go. So therefore, we have enough time. No, time is flying. Start this process right now, since you have only done 1.5 lessons. Not half even, like quarter have been covered, but we have to cover another part, the remaining big part from lesson number 2. So start the process. It's really important. Otherwise, what I have seen, some people, they temporarily stop the degree and they said, in next week we'll do it. But challenge එකක් ගන්න. You have that energy right now. You are very young right now. You don't have family. Even though you have family, but since you have decided to do this degree, you have that courage. So start the process. Why I'm telling you is, ask question. Talk in the class. Share your experience. If you can't understand, tell me, Pute. I will explain. Okay, anyhow, I'll stop the lesson right now. So my kind request is, study well, self-study, and when I give homework, do it. Make your own short note. Try to study according to timetable. Try to spend at least 1 hour per week, per day for your study. It's perfectly okay if you can give 2 hours, but if it is really hard, if you're not working, you have enough time to study. But then students, those who did not study, can help your friends, those who are working right now. It's called the real beauty of these human relationships. But if you since you have decided to do this degree, try to do your level best. It is the must requirement right now, because we are always there for you as lecturers to help you. There is a large staff in the lpec to help you for the administrative purpose. So therefore, my blessings will never less for you. So try to discuss, or try, even though I have this, actually it's really hard for us to give very big picture about each and every topic, because we have 2 hours, we have 3 hours, we have only 20 sessions covering 15 topics. Using 60 hours is a real challenge. It's a real challenge. 20 session, 3 hours for one session, then 60 hours we have only. We have to cover 15 topics. We have only 4 hours for one topic. So simultaneously, we have discussed exam focus question as well. See how it's challengeable for us. So therefore, don't believe that we are giving each and every point to you. Spoon feeding is difficult, my dear student. Since you are at the degree level, you are following a degree. There is a significant contribution from your end as well. Okay. Let's meet in next day as the day 3, and I'll continue the lesson number 2, and we'll provide you lesson number 3. We'll start lesson number 3 as well, if time permits. Later on, we can do the exam focus question covering first lesson, second and third. Okay. So I'll make necessary arrangement to send you these handouts, and we'll send to the lpec once the lecture is over. So thank you very much for being with me, and have a nice day and good night, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Miss. Thank you.